Alrighty, guys, so speaking of some of the cast members of The Odyssey, we also have some news about Dune Part 3. Dune Part 3, or, as we all assume it to be, the adaptation of the second Dune book, Dune Messiah, and that book has a lot of interesting twists and turns in it for sure, but, it feels like it completes the arc of Paul Atreides and some of the characters, because I think after the second Dune book, you go way into the future and you start looking at other things. So it looks like, Dune Messiah, Dune Part 3, or whatever it's going to end up being called, will be the culmination of what we've seen from the characters before. So Denis Villeneuve has been intent. Denis Villeneuve being the director of Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, the Oscar-nominated Dune Part 2, although Denis Villeneuve, crazy, but did not get an Oscar nomination for Best Director for Dune Part 2, which is just crazy. It's a crazy thing. He directed one of the most beautiful, gorgeous-looking films, and the story was great, the action. Anyways, we can talk about all of that when we do our Oscar preview a little bit later, maybe in a couple weeks. But going back to Denis Villeneuve, so he's directed Dune Part 1, Dune Part 2, and he seemed intent to do Dune Part 3. A couple months ago, it was reported that Dune Part 3 would be releasing in late December, I think, or mid-December of 2026. So I think something like December 16th, 2026. So still a ways away, right? And it was also reported around that time that Dune Part 3 probably wouldn't start filming until maybe early 2026. But now, as I'm recording this, we've actually gotten some confirmation that Dune Part 3 is going to be rolling really soon. It's been interesting because the last couple months, maybe it has to do with the writers and actors strikes that happened a little while ago, that, things were slowing down, and then all of a sudden things are ramping up again. That was, I think, late 2023, right, when everything was happening in that regard. So I think maybe now things are accelerating because you see, Doomsday is going to start filming soon, and we talked about the Odyssey is filming right now, and Dune Part 3. Add Dune Part 3 to that list, because Dune Part 3 looks like it's going to be rolling cameras in June of 2025, because according to, I think, Screen Rant or Deadline, maybe Screen Rant is reporting the Deadline article, but Dune Part 3 is going to start filming in June. It's going to start filming in June 2025. I think Denis Villeneuve was reported on saying a while ago, we might start rolling much sooner than we thought because things are just moving quickly. The script is almost done. And he said, but don't quote me on when we're going to start filming because I just don't know. These films take a long time to make. So we all kind of thought, okay, the December 2026 release date seems reasonable. But June 2025... that means that we're probably going to get, set pictures and other things coming out, maybe plot synopses about, what the premise is and how things are going to change. I mean, we know, for those of you who have read Dune Messiah, we know that there are going to be some changes just purely based on the way that Dune Part 2 ended, right, with Chani in particular. If you've read Dune Part 2, if you read Dune Messiah, you know that Chani's role is not, it's being set up in a very different way than it plays into Dune Messiah. So I'm very interested to see what goes on in that regard. So yeah, I think a lot of changes were going to be made in Dune Messiah. It's an interesting book. It's a very different kind of book than Dune. It's much shorter as well. So I'm very curious to see how Denis Villeneuve is going to approach it. But guys, it looks like cameras are going to start rolling. And like I said before, just looking at an actress like Zendaya, for example, I think it was reported before that she wasn't really going to have time for Spider-Man 4. And maybe that's still true. But I think one of the reasons was because of Dune. But if Dune is moving up to an earlier spot, or maybe this was, that conflict anyway. So maybe this is what the conflict originally was, and maybe this is what she was saying, I can't film Spider-Man 4 that much because of Dune Part 3 being in 2025. Who knows? But, I think that this is an interesting thing, right? Because it seems like Dune Part 3 is moving much faster and Dune Part 2 did. I think there were 4 years between Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, so or 3 years rather, 3.5 years. So it's really exciting to see Dune Part 3 moving ahead very quickly. And if we're lucky, we're going to get Dune Part 3 probably 2.5 years after Dune Part 2, which is a very exciting thing. And I'm very curious, like I said, to see a first trailer, to see even a plot synopsis, just to see how Denis Villeneuve is going to approach a different book, a very different and interesting book in the Dune lore. And I'm pretty sure, I would assume he's going to be done after that, though. I also think the Dune universe is going to keep going. We have Dune Prophecy confirmed for Season 2, like we talked about a couple weeks ago. And I'm sure someone will try to tackle Dune, God Emperor Dune, or Children of Dune, or whatever the next few books are called. So we'll see about that. Guys, what do you think of the news that Dune Part 3 is going to be filming soon, in maybe 3 or 4 months? Let me know in the comments down below.